Greetings all. Who knew talking about D&D controversies would be so volatile, right? Well, let's take a quick break from that and instead focus on another controversial topic: metagaming. A fair definition of the term is thus: when a player utilizes the knowledge that the player has but the character does not. However, as we shall see, things aren't quite so simple. If you like this content, remember to like, share, subscribe, and you can watch even more of it. D&Disability is here to bring an academic, that is to say, disability and play-focused theories, into the real world, and think critically about what we do with TTRPGs, how we do it, and what RPGs do for us. If you don't like a critical thinker, go crawl back under that rock you crawled out from after you shout about it in my comment section. Make sure you shout about it a good few times so it really sinks in too. The algorithm loves it. Now then, for those of you that are still here, pay attention. Here's where we get super nerdy. You might have surmised I am not happy with this definition, and you would be correct. Because let's test it against a classic example. And indeed, we will be testing it against several classic examples in this video. But for the first one, a DM rubs their hands together, 6-7 trolls on their second level party, and immediately howls in righteous indignation when the party proceeds to pull out oil and light torches, and as the DM is halfway through accusations of metagaming, the party speaks up. "Haven't our characters heard of trolls?" DM stops, reluctantly agrees, and the fight continues. The trolls get burned, some party members die, and good times are had by all. This typical example was made by WebDM against the idea of metagaming, and I agree. Characters have knowledge that sometimes mirror player knowledge. In other words, they work co-linearly. However, the issue isn't quite so cut and dry. Sometimes a character isn't involved in a scene or merely hasn't observed what's going on and starts to react as if they had. Surely this is metagaming, right? Well, let's look at another example. If the players react to, say, what a villain is planning 200 miles away in their evil Fortress of Doom because you showed them an out-of-game cutscene of your evil overlord being evil, then yes, that is metagaming. However, a fighter charging down the hallway to save a character's life when they didn't, or couldn't, have known the character was in danger isn't, or at least it is, but it really doesn't matter, metagaming. But here's why. From a gameplay perspective, all the character would need to say is, "Well, golly gee, I wonder where my thief has gone. I guess I'll just wander down the hall and check in. They've been gone an awfully long time." And so, indeed, the fighter will wander down the hall, and they will get the exact same result as if they simply went charging down the hall screaming, "I'm coming for you, buddy!" Put it this way. Are you sure there is absolutely no way that fighter didn't hear, think, perceive, or even imagine something going wrong? Wasn't there a scuffle? Did the thief's dagger not hit the floor? Did the thief cry out as they were strangled by a choker? Or maybe even they just got a bad feeling. Let's reference Star Wars, right? The whole "I got a bad feeling about this" gag. So then why not react to this bad feeling by charging? Charging, it's what fighters do after all. My point is, chances are your character may know something that the player does not, or might know something in a different way that leads to the same result of the player knowing something else. The key details, sight, smell, sound, or magical premonitions that the player would never have because obviously they don't exist. And this is also a result of DMs mostly ignoring senses like smell, taste, touch when giving room descriptions, or not accounting for that, once again, Star Warsian bad feeling effect. But let's look a level deeper, as of course we do as good academics here. John Huizinga, in his book Homo Ludens, puts forth a theory of play that is entirely too complex to go into here. But one key concept was the creation of safe temporary spaces for play to happen in. For D&D, this is the gaming table. However, there are spaces within spaces in these games. Academics such as Turner create a theory of play by further examining the values generated within RPGs specifically. Turner would cite Carl Bergstrom's act of playing for togetherness, which promotes self-reflexivity by allowing players to, and I quote, look at their own processes with analytic precision. And we'll cycle back to that later. What this does is it creates a space where players gain control within a group-generated reality. This safe space is generated by inserting details, often just for character descriptions or actions, as your character interacts with the world. These levels of interaction, mentioned above, are first put forward by sociologist Gary Allen Fine, using Erving Goffman's framework analysis in 1974 to identify at least 3 separate, quote-unquote, finite worlds of meaning. And for more on this subject, please see Daniel McKay's book, The Fantasy Role-Playing Game, A New Performing Art, page 53. But this is where McKay argues that we have 3 distinct frameworks of play. 1, the social frame inhabited by the person. 2, the game frame inhabited by the player. 3, the world frame inherited by the character. And once again, see McKay, page 54. Now, I disagree with this rigid separation of person and player, as they often merge in practice. But we can see clear lines between player and character being blurred here. The character is the vehicle for the player who has all the knowledge associated with them. This further reinforces why arguing about the earlier thief example in our 3 examples of metagaming makes no sense. But let me explain. We engage the game as players in both temporal and non-temporal time frames on multiple levels. This is where everything happens out of game and players come together to spend 5 minutes describing their in-game turns, which take anywhere from 6 to 10 seconds, depending on what game you're playing, or say a minute in AD&D. And here is where I merge my theories with Turner, McKay, and others. To me, there is an in-game level. This is where all the real events of the game happen and is a result of the player level. This is also where you exist as a player when you RP as your character. However, there's a 3rd layer, the one where we spend, I would argue, most of our time in. This is the in-between layer. This is where the liminality of TTRPGs comes in. This is where we transition, if only briefly, into or out of character, where we crack jokes, make references, and, as I would argue, decide to charge after our thief buddy who could be dying down that hallway. In conclusion, we can sit and argue over whether or not a player has the right to intervene, but the end result is the same. The player finds a workaround for the in-game meta-knowledge. The frame shifts from character out to player and then back in again. Their turn would take 60 seconds longer and the same result occurs. Characters simply have knowledge that players don't, and this can often account for the meta-knowledge the player has when running them. This was the case in the 70s when D&D first started, and should still be the same today. Some cases, like the out-of-game cutscene, make sense to crack down on. But in short, we shouldn't bother. Just ask the character to give an in-game plausible excuse and move on. Turn a moment of conflict into an opportunity to be creative. Alright, y'all. You would have seen some new art in this video. Please check out the artist down in my comment section below. She has done some amazing art, and if you like it, by all means, go see. She'd love to do some for you as well. So, with that, take it easy, and I'll see you next week.